This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. You know what this podcast is about. We talk about marketing, talk about business, and we give you guys tips to assist you in your business journeys. And you know me, the host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's partnership coordinator. And we have a really cool guest today, Jack Francis from the Escape Pod. Hi, Jack. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you here to have our episode, and I'm looking forward to all the cool things that we're going to do. But to get the ball rolling, get us started, I have a little game prepared for you. So I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I say some word. Okay?
All right.
Well, that's literally it. I just want to look into how your brain thinks on short. Okay, so the first word that I'm going to say, NFTs.
Gimmick.
Gen Z.
Interesting.
Interesting. Viral videos.
Tricky.
TikTok.
A time suck. Yeah, spend too much time on it.
Threads.
Tumbleweed.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah. I guess more popular, becoming more popular.
Yeah. Jack, that was kind of a look into how your brain fires under pressure. We should probably dig into some deeper stuff, but we'll get us started. Why don't you tell us everything that we got to know about yourself? We obviously learned that you don't support NFTs. I don't either. Don't worry. I think it's a modern form of gambling. But tell us more about yourself, what you do. We gotta know.
Yeah. I guess the elevator pitch. I've been in social media about 10 years now, and sort of bounced between agencies and brands. Always, I guess there's so many roles within social media. So I've touched where community management, project management, and now sort of in the current role at the Escape Pod, I'm more sort of strategy focused. And that's where I probably find the most interesting part of social in terms of the ideas and working very closely with creative teams and other strategy guys. But yeah, it's been back and forth. I've only been in the US coming up to a year now. Before then I worked in London, so worked at an agency called Born Social there, and worked at eBay for a few years looking after their social strategy for the UK market. So I'm not tired of the world of social yet. It keeps changing and it's hard to keep up, but it's a fun part of the marketing world to be in.
For sure. That's so interesting that you just moved to the US. How has that change been? Just curious. I don't know, business related, but just curious. Well,
It's been pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know about all the paperwork and everything that goes into that. So it's been, big uptake and sort of just getting my feet in terms of like career stuff and like getting to know people. I know so many like great marketers and great agencies in the UK, but I was kind of starting from scratch to a degree in the US with some help of some colleagues as well, who have been great. But even like how marketing works is different, how brands operate, budgets, influencers, talent, all those types of things are slightly different when it comes to the US versus the UK market. So slowly been wrapping my head around that. But it's been a fun journey.
Would you say the difference is kind of slight, or do you think it's because you said slight difference, but I'm curious to like genuinely, do you think the difference is like really big, medium size? Like how much have you actually felt that change?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think like the one thing that's kind of taken me back, and I knew this from afar, but actually being here is just like everything is marketed in the US. And I'm not just talking like social media games. Like you go to a sports game and the scoreboard is sponsored by someone, the halftime show is sponsored by someone. It's like every single opportunity to advertise is like taken, which, you know, I guess if you're looking at it in like a creative way, there's so many opportunities to like play around with messaging and do things, but it can be like, I think people in the US, probably more so in the UK, can be a little bit like tired of marketing if they're seeing the same messages, or at least something that's not that creative or interesting. So like, it's probably harder to cut through the noise, I would say. There's just, yeah, there's so much going on, and so much to cut through. And even like the funny thing is the UK is like a small place, like geographically speaking. So like whenever you do like campaigns, it's like if it's UK wide, that's 99% of everything you're going to do. Whereas like a lot of the campaigns here, it's like, okay, we're targeting the Northwest, or we're targeting like the East Coast. And it's a lot more like segmented. Like obviously you will do like national campaigns, but it depends on the scope of the campaign, which I was kind of like wrapping my head around as well. So
And the US is so big that I think if you're doing something nationwide, the budget is just so much bigger.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because like I think every time I go to the US, I think one of the things that really kind of shocks me, is like you said, like marketing is everywhere. I think the convenience of shopping really shocks me
yeah,
because I feel like I'm from El Salvador. In El Salvador, it's not like that. I also feel I lived in Taiwan for a while, so I've lived in Asia,
got you.
and they do a lot of shopping, like online shopping, but not in the way that people do it in America, where like they will order something on Amazon Prime and it'll arrive the same day. Um, and I don't know, I felt like it was like, yeah, I mean, I can see why consumerism is so big here because, you're getting targeted with things all the time. And also, it's so easy for you to just, add to cart and then buy it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Convenient.
that's like it's huge. Like I think that was like probably one of the shocking things that I had probably when I've sort of been in the US is that from the marketing side of how much stuff is in your face of like purchasing things.
Yeah, yeah. Like even since the last couple of months, there's, like Instacart and all these other companies just like blow up. And because it's all like centered around convenience and making everyone's lives like as easy as possible, which is like, there are companies like that, like, like Uber Eats, for example, is like very big in bigger cities in the UK, but like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like a different mindset, or it's just like convenience as a whole is takes more of a back seat in the UK versus like a US audience. So it's yeah, it's really fascinating.
For us, I would say it's like at least in El Salvador, I think it's a financial thing.
Right, right.
Right. Like obviously El Salvador is a third world country, so that really influences a lot of things. And Uber Eats is big here in like the capital. And I think, like you said, like areas where there's like bigger people, like bigger population and stuff. But in general, I think people are not using Uber Eats as much because of money. Like they would rather cook than
Yeah.
spend money on like ordering in. Whereas like I think America has also like they have Postmates and like all of these other services to like
Yes.
send or like to each other. And I think post COVID it's gotten even more pronounced because I think during COVID a lot of companies sort of adapted to that kind of remote model. Um so like you said, yeah, no, it's insane. I also I have that cultural shock. You know what else that really also kind of strikes me about the US is the how overtly nice waiters and waitresses and how chatty everyone. I feel like everyone in the US super super chatty. And I like in Taiwan, for example, everyone was like you're like service people were like, what do you want to eat? And that's it. Like they were not gonna sit and chit chat. Um People don't talk to you on the street. And I feel like in the US, everyone's always like super, super friendly. I don't know if that's just like my impression because I know they want to get tipped. for a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Like it kind of blew me away. Like I knew the like stereotype around customer service, but you really are like, whether it's like filling up your water constantly, all those types of things, like it's been really like, I mean, in the UK, you will get like, I guess it depends on the waiter, but there's not the tipping service. So like sometimes it can be hard pressed to even like pay your bill at the end because you're trying to flag someone down
Yeah.
to find out where the waiter is. So yeah, it's a change for sure.
Yeah, we have the same thing. We're just like, your waiter is ignoring you. They're busy, and you're just like, "Hello, I'm gonna pay my bill."
Yeah.
And in the U.S., it's like, "Oh my gosh, did you guys have a great meal?" And they're like chatting with you, and I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. But yeah, no, it's great. And I think it's really cool that you have that kind of different perspective, in culture and just in general life. I think a lot of times people don't realize how much just in general a cultural background, a location is going to affect the way that you do marketing.
Mm.
And in a country that has like so many states and they're so separate from each other, I think what's really interesting is how marketing is done probably in Chicago, which is where you're based, versus in like Texas.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
probably different because you also have a different reality from the people of Texas versus the people of Illinois, right? So it's like really interesting to me. Um, but I think what I wanted to ask you, like from more of a global standpoint, is when it comes to actually coming up with marketing strategies, with like technology and social media and all of the changes that happen, right? Like have been happening. What do you think brands still get wrong when it comes to actually coming up with successful marketing strategies?
I think it's a good point, like a good question, and it kind of links back to what we were talking about. I still think a lot of big brands get this wrong, and I've seen this myself, is like localization. To your point, like I've seen this even happen in the US, but also like from a Europe point of view, in terms of like you might try and roll out the same campaign in the UK or kind of like only do subtle tweaks to a UK campaign and try and roll it out in Germany. But like the slightest bit of humor or comedy or like, like colloquialisms don't land the same in different countries. And you can even say that for like the US, like your example, like there's a lot of like urban and like city workers and youthful workers in Chicago versus like areas of Texas that might be much more like remote and like countryside. So talking to like a city audience or assuming that you're talking to all these like urban workers when
Yeah.
people have different lifestyles is like, I think can be a big miss. And it's like, but on the other hand, like if you get localization right and you understand the audience, so if you're doing like a very targeted Chicago campaign and you understand what's important to Chicagoans and their daily lives, like you can really have an impact. And it's almost like people want to be understood or at least sort of like feel that if you're being targeted to and spoken to as a brand, it's like, oh, okay, you get what you're saying. And like, not me, but like, the culture that you're speaking about. And I think that's, it's hard to get right. Don't get me wrong. That's why brands do get it wrong, because sometimes they don't have the resource to tailor 16 different campaigns to different audiences. And, budgeting also plays a part, but I think sometimes you can achieve less with more if you stick to being a bit more, niche in
Vague?
terms of who you target. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually was gonna ask you if you thought that it was a financial reason, because I feel like I see a lot of brands doing that because of money.
Yes.
And like you said, like budget, like they probably have that want. But then do you think that if you have like a budget that's a little bit more restricted, but you want to target different areas, like whether it's various different countries or various different areas within one country, but you have to like you can't do it as localized as you want, is it better to create like a big general ad type of
Mm.
or like campaign that's you attempt to appeal to the masses in the most general way possible, or to just say like, you know what, I'm just going to reduce my budget to like Chicago and then just do Chicago, for example?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good question. I think like it depends on, I guess, what you're trying to get out of it. The way I would approach it is if like you're doing an awareness campaign, right, where you want as many eyeballs as possible and you want to kind of just broadcast, maybe it's new news or like new product or something along those sort of lines. Your best bet is probably just to sort of like stretch that like location targeting as broad as possible and reach many people, try and get the news out there. But then if you look at it from the other side, if it's more of an engagement or maybe even a conversion like KPI or metric, like I think you better spend spending money in a more sort of like narrow sort of parameters. So like whether that's a certain state, whether that's a few cities that will resonate with that type of messaging. I think that's where you're going to stand out, because if you end up sort of, if you do want to broadcast your message, you get eyeballs, that's fine. But otherwise, if you're trying to engage people, or at least trying to bring people through, the traditional marketing funnel, if you end up sort of hitting people in those like very niche communities with this broad messaging, I feel like you end up blending into the noise of all the other marketing going on. So you don't really stand out. You don't have anything unique to say. So it can be a dangerous trap. You end up sort of like just broadcasting messaging, and it only sort of lands in certain places, and other places you're ignored. So
Do you think that, because I feel like a lot of brands are including influencers and social media into like that strategy. And I feel like it makes sense to me for some brands, right? For especially B2C, I think they strive, like I think it makes them a lot of sense to see a B2C company investing heavily on influencers and social media, because that's where their audience is going to be. But I feel like I've also noticed that a lot of brands have done influencer work and social media stuff because it seems like it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be more cost effective, I guess. But I feel like I don't know if that is true nowadays, because I genuinely feel like a lot of times an influencer collaboration, for example, is only going to work if you are like collaborating with someone who is actually going to get you to convert into a sale, right? And I feel like very little influencers nowadays do that. And a lot of money, like I think as the sort of influencer culture grows, they ask for more money in like sponsored videos. So I don't know how cost effective it ends up being for a brand to actually use influencer work. I think it only works with specific industries in the B2C world, which is more like when people are asking for reviews for products. I think they kind of thrive a lot because of the fact that people are actively looking for it. But for the most part, I feel like it works very much like, I don't know, I don't feel like it works as much, but I kind of want to hear your take on it.
yeah. No, I think you raise some good points. It can be like a real easy trap to fall in, especially because there's a lot of solutions out there that will find influencers for you, and they won't really take into account like how your audience matches up to theirs. Like they may come across cheap, but there's usually, reasons for that. When maybe it's an engagement thing, maybe it's for the level of content that's being produced, or maybe just the fact that they work with a lot of brands, and it's, their followers have become kind of tired of seeing that type of content. I think the two things for me is like, you have to marry up like how you can track the content. I think that's like getting your like ducks in a row, however you want to word it. Like before you work with these types of people, it's like, what is the goal that you want to achieve? How do you measure that? Like maybe it is just engagement rate and those types of things, and you're going after that type of content. But if there's like a website angle or a sales angle, like making sure that you can track those things, or at least have like oversight on those types of things to inform those decisions. And then also like what I was a big believer in, especially doing work in the UK with eBay, was like, if you can find the right influencer, and especially if you can find the right, I guess like you both align on a goal, whether it's like the audience you want to speak to or what you believe in a certain industry, work with these people on like long-term basis and grow together. I think if you can have these long-term relationships, it often, speaking to a budget point of view, if you sign an influencer for sort of a quarter at a time or 2 or 3 months, usually is more beneficial from a budget point of view, but also you're able to sort of like build recognition between like, okay, this person has a partnership with this person, and you can tell more of like a long story. I feel like a lot of like the fleeting, like maybe it's like a beauty brand or the fashion brands do it. It's just like one-off posts here, there, or they blanket like 100 influencers at a time. And the messaging isn't clear, and like some content's good and some isn't. But like, if you can have maybe almost like an advocate or like a network of people that you like as a brand really connect with, and then you hope that obviously the audience do the same, and that messaging is a lot stronger, is what I always believe in when it comes to an influencer point of view. Not always possible, because obviously, things change like month by month in terms of marketing priorities and budgets, but it's a nice way of looking at it. It's more of a relationship as opposed to like, I'm just going to tap up that person there and hope that video does well.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I've seen a lot of brands, like you said, like a lot of beauty brands do like a lot of the influencer
Yeah.
stuff. And I don't know how much it like sometimes I think I saw this guy on TikTok who made like a video that was a joke about how he wanted to be a beauty influencer because he saw how beauty influencers got like a bunch of free stuff.
Yeah.
They got like the brand trips and he was like, "Oh, like you want to be a beauty influencer? That looks so fun." Um and it was like a joke. And then a bunch of brands started sending him stuff like, "Oh, here it is, like
Uh-huh.
product for you to do your influencer journey, like your beauty stuff." And he kind of leaned into it and started
Right.
getting stuff. He got started going on brand trips and like doing stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like, "Thank you, Dior, for sending me this concealer," or whatever. And I was thinking, like, that's a funny gimmick for him and his like uh influencer like self, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was like, how much is this actually working for brands? This guy doesn't use makeup. People
Yeah.
don't watch his content for makeup. He doesn't like recommend. He doesn't even know how to put on makeup because they were sending him like skincare. And then I
Yeah.
remember seeing like one time they actually sent him like actual makeup for him to do it because Coachella was like on the weekend and like we're
Right.
all
Right.
and he was like, "I have no idea what to do with all of this. Like, I don't know all these products, and I'm lost." I mean, the beauty stuff was like basically it was a joke for him. Which is like I get that, like it's fine for him, but I kept thinking to myself, like when I was watching all of this unfold, I was thinking, how is this actually beneficial to all of these brands that are sending this guy
Yeah.
massive amounts of PR and flying him to all of these places to like be at these events if he doesn't even understand what the products do?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I guess it's because of his joke, but I don't know how much that sort of like marketing strategy worked. And I feel like I see a lot of brands sort of trying to do that nowadays, which is just kind of get in people's spaces however they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess if you're a playful brand and you're kind of in on the joke of it and you know that this kind of thing isn't like that serious and you're playing into the irony, that's fine. But yeah, it's like, I doubt a lot of those brands were doing that. And they were kind of just like, he's probably the hot new like content or the hot new person that's like, this like journey's
Yeah.
blowing up. So it's just like, let's just send stuff so we can get in his like latest videos. And it's, I don't know. I don't see the usefulness in it for sure. Like you said.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, also just because it's just like, if you had the budget for something like that, I think that would also make sense. I don't think every brand in the world has the budget to be sending random packages of PR to like people that are not necessarily the best targeted ones, and just for a joke and to like show yourself that you're like a jokey brand. So I think it kind of like it's a difficult thing to sort of balance. Which actually brings me to the question that I had, which is kind of like balancing that, because I think a lot of brands are doing this for kind of like long-term success. Like they're looking at it in the way of like brand awareness, and like future customers, and like you're kind of getting yourself out there, right? But I think a campaign, when you're planning something, it's not just about that brand awareness, which is important. Everything is important, but I think it's
Yeah.
also like you're also striving for that short-term success, right? Like you
Mhm.
want to see something come out of it within that like Q1 when you implemented the
Yeah.
strategy or whatever. How do you think actually you can balance these two things into one sort of plan without having to sacrifice too much of the other? Or do you think you kind of just have to focus on either one?
No, I mean, I think it's definitely hard to like perfectly hit both parts, right? Like there's always going to be, especially like whether it's not even marketing higher ups, there's people in companies, whether it's shareholders and things like that, where it's like they don't care about brand awareness. They want like immediate returns on money that's going in. They want prices to share prices to go up, all those types of things. So you have to always balance those. I mean, sometimes you have the luxury of having a little bit more leeway when it comes to brand awareness, but I think it really comes down to like how you're activating in other channels. I think it's going to be hard unless you have a really sort of solid strategy and a solid product to just lean on influencer marketing to sort of like cut through and go through those conversions and bring people through that funnel. You really kind of have to make sure that like influencer strategies and like showing up in those types of placements is like, that's part of it, but then you can retarget people. You're showing up elsewhere on like whether it's online video and website marketing. It's, you almost want to, I guess, strategically bombard people as much as you can. So it's like you want the creative to talk about, you know, introduce people about the product if you're looking for that, and also speak to why that product's important and why it matches that audience, and sort of guide them through the funnel that way. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the brand awareness. I think it's stuck in the same rhythm of like, the brand awareness should only really be a core metric for, in my point of view, is if you have something new to talk about, or if you're a new brand as a whole. So if you're new on the market, you obviously want to raise awareness, get people to know who you are. If you're an established brand, it's like, what new thing do you have to talk about that people should care about? If you just keep talking about like your brand slogan and what you stand for, and I don't think it's really engaging or interesting to people, unless it is something like, you know, you're completely revamping the brand that has been established for years. Like, I think
Yeah.
new news is like what drives awareness and what should drive like pushing people that way. Otherwise, just focus on like keeping people engaged, telling stories, like doing interesting things that hopefully stand out. And the awareness is kind of secondary to that. And then you can ramp it up when you're doing much more like PR worthy or new product stuff, I would say.
So what I'm curious is I feel like in this sort of market and age that we are at,
Mhm.
creativity has never been more important. Um, I think you need to have some kind of creative outlook on things in order to stand out from all the noise, because everybody and their mother is marketing stuff now, and it's
Yeah.
a little bit more accessible with the internet, to sort of try to even come up with an ad. Do you think that marketing, like, strategies, like older ones, kinda like being in, like, a TV commercial, newspapers, stuff like that, is still something that brands should consider, that they should still want to maybe be curious about adding to their budget? Or do you think it's better to just go, like, full digital, especially if you're a brand that has, like, maybe a more limited amount of budget?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting like topic. I think I'm biased because I've sat in social my entire career, and I definitely still think it's like, if you're trying to broadcast message a campaign and reach people, like I don't think there's many other platforms out there other than social that do that for like as cheap as social can do it, and like as targeted and as granular as you can get. That being said, like I think to our previous point, say for example, if you're, I don't know, like you're trying to target like a restaurant scene and you're trying to like do a product for that type of thing, there might be like magazines that you can layer on top of like social advertising, or like people that have retention in those areas. Maybe it's like a certain show, or even like like a publication that has like a really like core, like in focused viewership in that area, where it's like that should play a part in like how you reach those people. So like, I think from that point of view, in a niche sense, it could work really well. Like, I don't think those channels the more traditional stuff should be ignored. Like, you can often reach people that have a much higher, like attention span. If it's like a publication that chefs read every week, for example, like you're going to get more attention from showing up in that space than you are on an Instagram ad where people scroll by. But I would still encourage, like, if you're trying to reach people at mass, social is the way to go. But I definitely don't think, in an ideal world, you would have some budget allocated to the stuff where you can really, really hone in on those focus points. And then another layer where you can go a little bit broader. But yeah, I definitely still think they play a part. I'm not surprised that like the bigger brands, and you see the trends, they pull back on, traditional like print media, TV marketing, and they're moving much more to like the digital creator social space, because it's all about like the targeting and the tools that you have at your like capability. It's you can be so narrow.
For sure. I definitely think social is a good way to start, especially if you're like a low budget brand.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can sort of begin to expand. I don't think that I think it's pretty much like the best and most affordable way to try to do it with like organic growth,
Mm.
um, and sort of word of mouth. And then as your brand is getting bigger, you probably can start investing in other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which leads me to the last question, which is, I mean, I kind of like brought this point up a little bit, but with creativity being more important, and I think AI being what it is now,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people have felt threatened by it. I think a lot of people feel like, like the creative juices that they have been working on for so long are kind of being trampled on by the
Yeah.
AI thing.
Yeah.
There's people who are very supportive of it, on the other hand, who are like, like this is just technology and innovation and you should be like, I feel like I've heard arguments from both sides.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, if you think that, you know, obviously it has had an influence, but what do you think creativity looks like right now in marketing for like with the existence of AI, with the existence of social media? Um, do you think that people are still having like I personally think that they still have to be creative just in different ways.
Mm. Mm.
But I'm curious what you think is happening through all of this change.
Yeah, and it's crazy at the moment. There's they feel like there's news stories every day about like AI versus the creative scene. Um, I think it should be viewed as a tool, right? Like it should be in an ideal world you would have creatives that utilize tools like AI to either improve their workflow or like even help with like idea generation. Like I do that from a strategy point of view when it comes to like blueprints for brands. Is like how do I help sort of like put the piece together what I'm thinking of. What I will say is I think like what's going to become more apparent and more important for brands is like transparency. Like if you are a brand that's utilizing AI or you have a creative team that does utilize AI and like marketing and those types of things, I think being transparent about like the fact that you are using it is super, super important. It's kind of almost reminds me back to like the 2010s where like certain brands would work with influencers, but certain brands would kind of skirt around the rules and it wouldn't be like, is this a paid advertisement from an influencer or like, is this kind of just word of mouth? It's like, that's the kind of territory we're in now is like, is this brand using AI and telling people or like, are they being upfront about it? Like, especially there's a whole world of, where we get into layoffs and things like that. It's like, is this team like, have they been replaced and they're using AI or just the transparency of like, there is a creative team, but this asset was made using AI. Like, I think the transparency is so, so important. Like if you could be upfront with your audience and let them know that like, hey, this played a part in those types of things. I think there was a good Nike example recently. I don't think Nike posted it themselves, but it was the team that worked on a campaign where they showed the storyboarding process using AI. So that was the transparency of like, look, there was graphic designers, there was videographers, there was editors, all this team that worked on this, but we lent into AI to kind of help us visualize and help move things along quicker when it came to a storyboarding point of view, and kind of use that as like the bare bones of their creative to be like, all right, that's what it could look like in this like quick generated world. How do we polish that, iterate on it, and sort of improve it? And I think that was a really interesting look of like, that's how it should benefit teams. Like, I think people value the human element of creative. They value someone that like put their hard-earned work into creating something cool. But like any tools to make things easier for people, I think should be acknowledged and sort of like considered for sure.
I don't yeah, I think I still think AI is just not at a place where it's polished enough to completely replace humans anyways.
Yeah.
I think like you said, like it'll help you get rid of that blank slate. But if you ever asked AI to write like a continuous thing, like you put like a prompt on ChatGPT and then you keep asking it questions, you realize that at some point the AI forgets. The AI is confused. It's like it gets fuzzy. And I think you realize that you still need someone to come in there and polish that. Uh,
Yeah.
and I would argue like you're still sort of the person behind it, right? Like, because if you're like being creative about what prompts you're giving it or how you're using this tool to make your job easier, it's still worth being used than to have to manually do certain things that would probably take you much longer. I don't know is in the future that's going to change and we're going to be like taken over by robots, living like Terminator or Wall-E or whatever. But I think for now, at least, it's still not pushing us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like at the end of the day, like the way to look at it, right, is that AI has to create something based on something else that exists on the internet. So like if you rely on it too much, or, you know, it becomes too much of like your creative output, you start to skirt like, all right, well, you know, what does this look like that is already out there on the internet? Like what's it borrowing from? So like, I think, like you said, helping with a blank slate or like tweaking the brilliant creative work that's already done by like editors and designers is great. But you know, the filters that go viral, or like the recent like even like the AI toy stuff, it's like that's been art that's been taken from somewhere else and kind of just like tweaked by AI. So it's like it's a sticky place for brands to play in, especially if you do want to, you know, you value your output.
No, but it's still like you said, it has to get it from somewhere. Like I think
Yeah.
people still have to be doing stuff because, like, at the end of the day, what AI is doing is just pulling information from the internet and then making something out of that.
Yeah.
If you stop putting information for the AI to pull, then it's gonna have nothing to create anymore, unless we make it sentient, which I hope we don't get there. It's a little bit creepy to me. It's giving Black Mirror.
Exactly. I agree.
But I think that's a great note to end this on. I mean, a little tragic, a little post-apocalyptic, but it's been fun. Jack, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. But before I let you go, I do want to give you the space to plug anything. This is the moment. If what we spoke about resonated with our audience, they want to talk to you, they want to connect with you. Yeah, space is yours.
I've ever done a plug before, but yeah, I mean, Jack Francis, you can find me on LinkedIn. I work at the Escape Pod. We do some pretty cool creative work in Chicago and work on very different brands. So yeah, if you ever need sort of help in the social space or marketing space and trying to sort of cut through the noisy world, then you can find us at the Escape Pod, or just reach out to me. Yeah, I've worked in social media a long time, so hopefully know what I'm talking about. But yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been great.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been so great to have you guys. I will be leaving his links on the description so that you can easily click, find Jack. Thank you so much. And everyone, subscribe, follow, listen, do everything. And I will see you on the next episode.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.